Hello dear viewer, today's Skyrim build is something really special, at least for me. It is a pure vanilla build, first off. It is a variation on one of my first published builds, and as much as the original, it tries to make the best out of the least effective combination of weapons, armor and magic. As we are wearing robes, wielding two-handed weapons, and as the need arises, switch from that to spells. The original build was very holy, designed to excel against the undead and generally give off the vibe of an angel of justice almost. Well, this time we will look at her when she have lost all hope and subdued to Molag Bal. Becoming a monster she has been trained to defeat. Gameplay-wise, the Fallen Angel is the most annoying type of Battlemage, but the constant switching between weapons and spells has its merits. You can use dual casting for schools where it matters, like destruction with impact, and then, when things get close and personal, can use sweep in two-handed to finish the fight faster. Dual casting in illusion, even without many other perks, means you will be able to mind control even the high-level humanoids, like, well, at least the bandit marauders. It can be greatly helpful as a secondary support skill. We also offset the innate weaknesses of the build with a few dirty tricks, like using Necromage perk to enhance everything about her, using Fortify Restoration potions to enhance all your worn enchantments and active blessings. We combine Intense Flames with Aspect of Terror to get some extra damage on cheap low-level fire spells, and we use one of the sickest combinations of Standing Stones with the Ethereal Crown. This way the build becomes very much playable on legendary difficulty. But let's talk the backstory for a bit. The Fallen Angel is an orphan, born one day to unknown parents, adopted and raised by a very eccentric follower of Talos. A lone traveler, searching the land for vampires and undead to slay, developing his own unique fighting techniques and life philosophy. For most of her youth, she was entirely devoted to following in his footsteps and taking care of him as he approached the old age. But when she first fell in love, she was utterly betrayed, not by her love interest, but by his family. The boy was a young noble, and romancing a traveling orphan zealot was not approved by the family. He was forced to marry someone else, despite all attempts at negotiation. Soon after, her mentor fell ill, and as she realized the impending gloom of loneliness, she prayed to Talos and all the Nine to at least spare her father figure. But there was no answer. The father was only getting worse. She knew but one way to prolong one's life, and it involved betraying the Nine for Molag Bal. She went alone into a vampire-infested ruin, and pretending she was a much worse fighter than she actually was, she got herself infected with the disease. For the next 3 days she awaited at her father's bed, waiting for her own sickness to change her into vampire so she could pass this unholy gift to him. But he was dying, and at the 3rd day at dusk he opened his eyes, whispered, "I'm so sorry," and drew his last breath. At this moment her mind shattered. She cried and screamed at the sky and pledged never to seek a cure for vampirism and spite the gods in any possible way. In the morning, when her change was finished, she left the shack to have her vengeance on the family of her first and only lover. Now the race is a Breton. Obviously early game we need both the spell absorption and magic resistance. The attribute spread is 2 magicka per 3, health per 2, stamina. This assumes you have your gear and standing stones organized more or less as presented in the video. Using a weapon without an absorbed stamina effect may cause you to go for an even spread. For the standing stones, we will eventually use the Ethereal Crown to combine Atronach with the Apprentice. The extra magicka regeneration of the Apprentice offsets the penalty of the Atronach, and the spell absorption of the Atronach offsets the weakness to magic of the Apprentice, especially if you drink an elixir of the healer before putting on the Ethereal Crown with the Atronach in it. Drink a few different Fortify Restoration potions before that, and you should never need any more spell absorption. Now for the main skills, enchanting is perked all the way to extra effects, so, well, what else is new? No other crafting skill is required. We use Umbra as our main weapon, so perhaps Arcane Blacksmith in Smithy could be a good idea as well, but with Fortify one-handed effects reaching 100% buff each, we should be fine without any smithing. We need to become a vampire early and then get the Necromage perk in restoration as fast as possible. You are going to need to cast healing spells on yourself often, your armor rating will be subpar and your health will be mediocre. The skill should level up quite fast, but consider speed leveling it with some weaker enemies damaging you and then you healing yourself and just keep repeating the process. Or you can also pay for training as often as the money allows for it, or you can do everything in your power to level it up fast. At any rate, the sooner you take the Necromage, the more perks, abilities and enchantments will be affected by it. In Alteration we wanna go all the way up to Expert, take Dual Casting, all ranks of the Mage Armor and Stability. Stability and dual casting can make your Ebony Flesh last for 4 minutes and the Dragon Hide last for 2. And with a finished build you will still have enough magicka to cast the Flame Cloak on yourself, which will definitely help, especially with the highly improved Flame spell dealing nearly 30 damage per second, not counting the Afterburn, which stacks with itself. So we definitely want both ranks of Augmented Flames in Destruction, and for maximum efficiency take them before the Aspect of Terror perk in Illusion. You see, fire spells have a hidden fear effect. If something enhances all your fear spells, it will also improve all the other effects of the same spell. Now, if you have taken the Necromage perk in Restoration before Aspect of Terror and Intense Flames, your super cheap novice spell of Flames can remain useful at all stages of the playthrough, particularly when stacked with your super enhanced Flame Cloak, which will have both its damage and range enhanced by all that cheesy synergy. Rune Master was taken not so much for the destruction runes, but for the new and super cool Anniversary Edition Paralyzes rune, which is an ungodly tool of crowd control while still inexplicably being an adept spell. Since you want to get into close combat eventually, in each fight, I deem Rune Master optional here. It helps, but you can definitely have a lot of use for the spell even if you can only drop the rune somewhere near. Dual casting with impact is great for the cloak and allows us to use a simple firebolt as a crowd control tool, slowing down the enemy approach while dealing noticeable damage. I did it often as a combat opener before taking my sword out. Weaker enemies are dead on arrival, so to say, and the stronger ones are weakened before feeding their souls to Umbra. So yeah, as mentioned, we also take a few perks in Illusion. Late game you will have little to no use for illusion spells, but they can sure carry you through early game bandit locations even without that many perks. Dual casting itself raises the maximum level of affected enemies, and so does the Hypnotic Gaze and Aspect of Terror, so your calm spells should be rather useful on humanoids. But after all the crowd control and fire damage is done and your magicka is nearly gone, it is time to pull out your sword. In two-handed we take the middle branch up to and including Sweep, with both the great critical charge and devastating blow on our way there. Critical charge is somewhat important when you want to close the gap fast, and Sweep will spread the lovely Umbra enchantment, potentially absorbing health and stamina from multiple targets at once. We take no sword perks here because 1, they don't really do that much in vanilla, and 2, we will portray her mad sword fighting skills with the block perks, specifically quick reflexes and all the bashing perks on the right and the shield charge. I am absolutely using shieldless shield charge more often now after the Jack Sparrow build, so just as a reminder, you can use shield charge without a shield if you time it right. You need a little bit of a run up at the sprinting speed and then raise your block exactly as you bump into an enemy. It may not always work, sometimes it's best to just quickly tap the block button repeatedly as you come into contact with an enemy. It gets much easier to time in slow time mode. How nice! Our slow time shout will have its duration increased with stability perk from Alteration. Quick reflexes can be used to improve the shout even further by blocking, triggering the reflexes slowdown, sidestepping to your left and immediately shouting. But even in and by itself, quick reflexes can be the cornerstone of your build, of your entire combat style. Take it early. Negating power attacks by bashing or simply moving away is one good way to survive the low armor rating and the general squishiness of the early game. For the gear, we have Umbra as our main weapon. It is a very good sword and it looks great, but you could consider carrying a spare player enchanted sword with some absorption effects too, because Umbra needs near constant refilling with soul gems. Then we want to obtain the Ethereal Crown and Goldur's Amulet. It is best to put them on after Necromage perk is unlocked and an elixir of the healer is consumed. The same goes for crafting all your player enchanted items. You can even loop the Fortify Restoration buff by drinking several different restoration potions and then the enchanter's elixir. For example, drink a draught of the healer, then the elixir of the healer, and then the enchanter's elixir. This should provide you with some ungodly buffs to all your enchantments, resulting in the total of all your fortified two-handed enchantments reaching 300%, and the Goldur's Amulet giving you more than 70 points to each attribute. It is absolutely bonkers. Just remember, you should also do the restoration potions loop before putting all your items on. Early in the game, prioritize Fortify two-handed, resist magic and fortify health effects. Now, most of these spells have already been mentioned, but here is the list just in case. Firebolt and Flames to soften and slow down enemies, Ebony Flesh and Dragonhide to cast between fights for protection, some mind-affecting spells for crowd control and training illusion, Paralysis Rune for much more crowd control and grilling the helpless paralyzed enemies with your Flames spell, and sometimes the Hangman's Noose to absorb health. Hangman's Noose is best used when a few weaker enemies approach, as the total health absorb will be better than most healing spells you can use. Shouts are chosen mainly for the flavor, but both of the evil downguard shouts can be useful. Soul Terror can provide you with an undead minion without any perks and conjuration. The sooner you can get the shout, the better, because you may desperately need some support and diversion early to mid-game, but will have no use for it once your late-game gear is done. And slow time for easier shieldless shield charge, as well as for all the normal uses and its general awesomeness. And I think that is that. The build will definitely struggle early game, but keep the most challenging adventures for the time after you have the Necromage and have collected some high-end Fortify Restoration potions, and you will start ruling the battlefield with both wits and sheer strength. Coincidentally, you will also become a top-notch mage slayer with your enhanced Atronach Stone absorption. And now what do you think? Should I make more vanilla builds? I definitely want to keep the modded ones going, but maybe from time to time at least, the simple pleasures of restoration looping and necromage abuse would suffice. Also leave a like and all your reviews and critiques down there. Consider supporting me on Subscribestar, and most importantly, subscribe for more excellent Skyrim content. Also, quite soon there will be some non-Skyrim content too, so stay tuned. Anyway, we will see each other again. Bye bye.
Wow.